Well, good morning. It's my privilege to bring you your pastoral update for this morning. I'm doing it a little earlier than usual because this week I was hoping to have been in Louisville at a conference with Pastor Ken and Pastor Jared, Doug Scott, Matt Walkus, and Paul Slaughter. But because of the coronavirus, we were not able to be there. So I've been attending this conference virtually, and so it's my hope to sneak it in this morning a little bit before the conference sessions get started and get going. And I'd love to say that this morning has just been a glorious and wonderful morning of the sun shining and the birds chirping, but really it's been more of one of short tempers and frustration and spilling coffee on myself because, I don't know, apparently I haven't learned to drink yet. And it's been kind of a frustrating morning. And it's hard to start out with a devotional when sometimes you feel like you're not at a good place of peace and you're kind of just struggling a little bit. So that's the honest reality from me. And as I've been thinking about what to discuss, I've been thinking a lot about the weight of worry and frustration that we can have. And I've continued to be spending a lot of time in Proverbs lately. And in Proverbs chapter 12, it talks about just what a weight worry can actually be. But then it talks about how uplifting, encouraging words are. And so I hope this morning I can uplift you with a couple of encouraging words. And one of them that I want to encourage you to is just not to continue to hold the weight of worry of things that you can't control. So what I want to talk about briefly this morning is this issue of faithfulness. In Matthew chapter 25, there's this really interesting parable where Jesus is illustrating what the kingdom of heaven is like. And he says it's like this master who leaves on a long trip, and he gives money to 3 of his servants, and he expects his servants to be faithful with them. And so the first servant's given basically 5 talents or 5 bags of silver, some translations say, or basically a unit of money. And when the master comes back, the servant was found faithful, and he had turned the 5 into 10 and brings it to his master. And the second servant was given 2 talents, and he turns it into 4, and he receives this wonderful commendation from his master. But this third servant is wicked, and he takes the money the master gave him, and then he digs a hole, and he puts the money in the hole. And when it's his time to account for how he has handled what the Lord has entrusted him with, the servant says to his master in verse 24, "Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, 'Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, cultivating crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid that I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back.'" And he gives it back to his master the same as he got it. And his master, he does not receive this commendation of "well done, good and faithful servant." Instead, he receives really a certain sense of judgment and condemnation that he's been wicked and unfaithful with what he's been entrusted with. And when I think about faithfulness, my mind immediately goes to our family's time of preparing to go and serve in Brazil. And I remember I was visiting with some good friends of ours, and my friend asked me, "Trevor, has God called you to Brazil?" And a lot of people have different ideas and opinions on what constitutes calling and, what does that look like biblically. But I remember telling my friend, I don't know if we're going to make it to Brazil. We had to raise what seemed like an insurmountable amount of money to be able to go and serve as missionaries in Brazil. But I said, to the best of my ability, God has called me today to be faithful in trying to raise the funds and build partnerships with people, families, and churches to be able to go to Brazil. And that was kind of a pivotal moment for me in my thinking to actually articulate that to my friend. And one of the most important things to me that I come back to over and over again is this idea of faithfulness today. Because I've encountered some missionaries who I haven't liked the way they've talked about how they serve. And sometimes I've talked to missionaries or people who wish to be missionaries but aren't yet. And they almost give the impression that they can't serve God in any way, shape, or form unless they make it to India or Africa or South America. And really, every day that they're not there is a day that's just wasted, and it's trivial, and they're frustrated, and they're looking at people that aren't partnering with them as hindrances to them doing what they think God wants them to do. But I would really like to push back on that and say, God has called you to be faithful where you are today. And even in the midst of frustrating circumstances, the question is not, are there frustrating things in our world? Are there things that worry us in our world? But the question is, when we stand before God, how are we going to account for the stewardship of the gifts and abilities and responsibilities that He's given us? And I hope that begins in a small way with a desire for us to be faithful each and every day. And that starts with faithfulness between us and the Lord, in being people who are marked by His word. As I've looked at, all the different news outlets and internet posts and different things, one of the things that's continued to frustrate me is, everyone wants to sell a story. They want to keep you coming back. They want to keep you for more news. And I've thought, what is the primary source of influence in our lives right now? Because if it's your favorite news outlet, that could be a really scary thing to be entrusting yourself to. But faithfulness today starts with faithfulness to Christ and recognizing what He's done in our lives and recognizing His goodness in our lives, even amidst a very long and frustrating situation that we find ourselves in right now. And faithfulness today also looks like, what are your responsibilities as a father or a mother, as a son or a daughter? What are your responsibilities in your job? Do them faithfully. Do them to the best of your ability. And one of the things I love about Matthew 25 is that the servant who wasn't given as much, he wasn't given 5 talents, he was only given 2, but he receives the same faithful commendation from his master. And I think for a lot of us, we can look at other people who we think are more gifted than we are, who have more responsibility than we do. And that's just really not the right question. The question is, what are you going to do to faithfully steward the gifts, the responsibilities, the positions, the influence, the job, the employment that you have today in a way that's honoring and pleasing to Christ? So if I can encourage you amidst many worrying words and things that weigh us down in frustration, it would be to go after faithfulness today, to the best of your ability today on Thursday. How can you be faithful with what God has put before you? And do that next best thing to the best of your ability. And lean on Christ for your strength, for His Spirit to empower you to do what you know you need to do. And my prayer for each of you from Kent City Baptist is that you would continue to hang in there, that you would be wise, that you would be an encouragement to those around you, and that we would glorify Christ to the best of our ability, even in the midst of a situation that is so far from ideal. On behalf of all the pastors, we can't wait to see you all again. We continue to just dream about when we get to meet together again, and we definitely look forward to that. Please know that we continue to uphold you all in prayer regularly. And if you guys need assistance in some way, please don't hesitate to reach out to the church office. I've been incredibly pleased and proud of our church in the ways that we have responded, and I've personally been encouraged by seeing many of your responses in the midst of the situation. So go in grace today and be faithful, and until next time, look forward to seeing you whenever that is. Bye-bye.